Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping into a fascinating idea from the book The Sovereign Mind, and it gets right to the heart of every single decision you make. The question is, inside your own head, who is really in charge? Oh, you know the feeling. We've all been there, right? One part of you is screaming to hit that snooze button, while another part is already doing the math on how late you're going to be. One part wants that extra slice of cake, and the other is whispering about your health goals. Well, that internal tug of war, it's not some personal failing. It's just part of being human. So, the way this book breaks it down, this internal battle is basically fought between two key players. On one side, you've got the impulsive mind. Think of it like a curious kid who just wants pleasure right now. And on the other side, you've got the discerning intellect, the wise guardian, the part of you that sees the bigger picture and, actually thinks about the consequences. Let's really get into this because it's a game changer. All right, so let's start by meeting the first character in this little internal drama of ours, the mind itself. Okay, here's the core idea, and it is a big one. No matter how old we get, whether we're 20, 40, or 80, our mind often keeps this fundamentally childish nature. Now, that's not some flaw you need to fix, it's more like its default setting. And just understanding that is the absolute first step to getting a handle on it. So the mind sees a shiny object. You know, that little notification on your phone, a juicy piece of gossip, a sudden craving, and it just lunges for it, completely blind to the potential cost or the danger. It wants what it wants right now. And it has zero concept that anything of real value usually takes some patience. And what happens when it's denied? That little spike of frustration or anger we feel? Well, let's be honest. It's basically an adult tantrum. This quote right here, it just nails it. This impulsive, unchildish part of us isn't something we just outgrow like a pair of old shoes. Nope. It's a constant companion. So the real question isn't about how to get rid of it, but how do we effectively, guide it? Okay, so that raises a pretty big question, right? If the mind is the child, then who's supposed to be the parent? Well, this is where our second character steps onto the stage. The source gives this guardian a name, Vivek Buddhi, which translates to the discerning intellect. You can just think of it as your inner CEO, your rational self, and its job is so important. It's not to crush the child mind or lock it away. Its job is to be a wise and loving parent, to watch its behavior, to channel its energy, and to protect it from its own worst impulses. And the job description for this internal guardian is actually super clear. First, you've just got to observe, what does my mind naturally drift towards? Is it distraction? Negativity? Then you guide it, and not by force, but by showing it a better, more rewarding path. And when it messes up, and trust me it will, you correct it with compassion, not by beating yourself up. And finally, and this is huge, you protect it. You curate its environment, you shield it from toxic stuff like endless doom scrolling or hanging out with negative people. Now let's be real. This guidance isn't always about being gentle and nice. Sometimes a good parent has to be firm, right? Well, the intellect has to do the same thing, setting and enforcing clear boundaries. Because without that consistent discipline, the source is pretty clear. The mind just develops these destructive habits that can lead to a whole lifetime of regret and unfulfilled potential. And what's really fascinating is that this whole internal power struggle, it doesn't just stay cooped up in your head. Oh no. The outcome of this relationship between the mind and the intellect has these profound, totally tangible effects on your physical world. Think about it. When that child mind is just running wild with no adult supervision, the result is total internal chaos. We're talking chronic stress, anxiety, frustration. This constant mental racket isn't just an abstract feeling. It literally floods your body with stress hormones, it messes with your systems, and eventually it can show up as very real physical disease. A restless mind really does create a restless body. But, and this is a huge but, on the flip side, a mind that's calm, focused, and well-governed by that intellect, it possesses an incredible power. The source talks about how people with a strong, resolute mind can endure amazing physical hardship or even speed up their own healing. They're not superhuman, they're just tapping into this deep well of strength that comes from being internally aligned. And the book uses this brilliant analogy to explain the connection. Mind and body are like water and steam. Yeah, they look totally different. One seems physical, the other not so much. But they are fundamentally the same stuff, just in different states. You simply cannot affect one without directly affecting the other. What you do to your mind, you are literally doing to your body. So the big question is, how do we actually do this? How do we nurture the guardian and guide the child? Well, the source says it all comes down to two kinds of food that we give ourselves every single day. These two inputs are ahar, which is your physical diet, and vihar, which is your lifestyle. Basically, the sum of your environment, your actions, your routines. The key insight here is that both of these are forms of nourishment, and both are absolutely critical for shaping your internal world. So let's start with ahar, the food. Get this. The text argues that agitating foods, things that are super spicy, heavily fried, or intoxicants, they don't just affect your body. Their subtle essence directly creates an agitated, restless mind. It even suggests that food that's earned dishonestly can make the mind rebellious. And our attitude is everything. Are we eating consciously for our health, or are we just mindlessly chasing the next flavor hit? And then there's vihar, your lifestyle. This is basically everything else. The people you spend time with, your attitude towards your work, the cleanliness of your home, your daily habits. Every one of these choices is a signal, constantly shaping the character of your mind, either making that guardian stronger or just feeding the impulsive child. So when you put all this together, the inner child, the guardian intellect, the foods we consume, it all boils down to one fundamental choice about the role your mind is going to play in your life. And this really is the ultimate choice. If you let that impulsive child mind be the master, its fickle, short-sighted demands will, without a doubt, lead to a life of chaos and regret. It is a terrible, terrible ruler. But if you train it, if you guide it to be a servant to your discerning intellect, it becomes the most powerful, loyal, and effective tool you could ever possibly imagine for building a life of true purpose. At the end of the day, the power to decide rests with you. Every single day, in every small choice you make, you're casting a vote. So who are you going to empower? The impulsive child or the wise guardian? The sovereign of your mind has always been and will always be you.